You are listening to Missed Apex Podcast. We live F1. Welcome to Missed Apex Podcast. I'm your host, Richard Reddy, but my friends call me Spanners. So, let's be friends. Today we have an awful lot of news. Silly season has come early, and from last season where we had 0 transfers, now we're looking at a completely different grid for 2025, and it's been a static F1 environment, but I believe that what we're seeing now is going to be shaping the Formula One we know and love for years to come. So this is actually a really interesting and vital segment of F1 news. So we are an independent podcast produced in the podcasting shed with the kind permission of our better halves. We aim to bring you a race review before your Monday morning commute. We might be wrong, but we're first. I'm joined in the shed by Matt Two Rumpets. Hello, Matt.
Do you think Sainz is an Audi or a Winnie?
Oh, Matt. Like a belly button. I get it.
Exactly.
And
yeah.
I was prepared for it. I'm like, Matt says random stuff in the intro. I've just got to be prepared, like a boxer. If he hooks, I duck. And that's just how it's got to be from now on.
Absolutely. I come up with a thing and you riposte.
Okay, I can't stand another clever comment. So here's Alex Jeansy Van Gene. Hello, Alex.
I was just going to say, I'm only here for hot takes and ripping off the information I get from my one person I know inside Formula One.
But I rip off information that I hear from you when you're not on the show.
Yeah, that's how it kind of has worked for the last 8 years. I was thinking about this earlier, and it's been 8 years since I've been on this show. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and you're not special. I rip off everybody's opinions as my own. So we really need
That's
someone...
That's your job as a host.
So we need someone who doesn't have good opinions. So we've got trackside reporter Antonio Rankin. Hello, Antonio.
Yeah, hi everyone. Just a PSA for everyone watching / listening. If I start to sound a bit quiet on the mic, it's because Spanners is trying to silence me and telling him he's wrong.
Oh, no. That's not. I'm not doing that. I'm not silencing anybody. Oh, you did that on purpose. You know, it's not like I'm doing mansplaining or anything like that. And just for your information, that's where you condescendingly tell a woman something she already knows.
Thank you so much. I had no idea. And you told me that so uncondescendingly.
Can you turn the mic actually back up now so people don't think I'm doing that? Let's dive straight into the big dirty news. Big dirty news. And yes, as the live stream has quite fairly pointed out, my cat has had a nap on my hoodie, but you can. This is our best hoodie, the black and red one. Go and check it out in the show notes below if you want to be rocking some Missed Apex merch. We've lowered the price because we couldn't find a way to get the US postage down. So we've just lowered the prices because we want people to be rocking Missed Apex merch. So go and check it out. Okay, so the first and most obvious massive news story is that Adrian Newey is set to leave Red Bull. Now, I don't think it's been actually confirmed, but it's being spoken about as if it is definitely fact. So I think the rumours are strong enough that we can take this as read that Adrian Newey has expressed a desire to leave. And then there's all sorts of rumours floating about that he's already rejected an offer from Aston Martin. That came from Peter Windsor. There's a rumour that he's speaking to Mercedes in Miami, and he is being strongly linked to Ferrari as well. So, as Alex alluded to, you know, we are not in the Rolodex. Adrian Newey's not in our Rolodex, but we all do know our fair share of Derek's. And I've heard some stuff from somebody who knows a lot of Red Bull people, but doesn't like leaking things. And I said to him, well, you've just told me, so you are leaking it. You've told me. I'm not gonna keep my mouth shut. And he said, it doesn't matter. No one believes you. And that might well be true. So the main thing that I'm hearing out of there is nothing sensational, is mostly that it is to do with all the badness around Christian Horner, and that Adrian Newey feels like his investments in Red Bull are being wrecked and the reputation of Red Bull is being wrecked, and he doesn't like the situation. And he was hoping that Christian Horner would leave and he would take over as team principal. And none of that's happened. So he is leaving. And also, he was affected because that was also his PA that was involved in the allegations. And Alex, I know you have a couple of Dereks in your Rolodex as well.
Yeah, so my Derek, who's been at Red Bull for 2-3 years, the same day that the news came out, he also said that he was going to leave the team, and they made him leave immediately. And he has been approached by another big team, and he's going to one of those teams. And it's one of the teams he doesn't think Adrian Newey is going to, because he feels that Adrian Newey has always said that he wants to work with Lewis.
Well, and it makes sense if you think about it. Like if we're gonna go through the rumors, first of all, if I'm Adrian Newey, why am I even leaving this team? And as Spanners alluded to, it's mainly to do with, I think he's uncomfortable with the power battle that has erupted in the wake of Dietrich Mateschitz passing over who controls the team. We can that makes sense to me just as a human being. It's not fun to be around that level of conflict, and you don't necessarily feel comfortable in a way that you previously did about your own sinecure. And we know that he has a few unticked boxes. But I think the real issue here is that I've heard that certainly Aston has made him a big offer that has been 86th. Mercedes is clearly out there. But he's expressed in the past that the two things that he's missed is, one, working for Ferrari, and two, working with Lewis Hamilton. And he could do both of those things very easily, except for possibility of his gardening leave interfering. But I think we'll talk about that in a bit. Yeah.
So, I mean, the gardening leave is an interesting one to pick up on straight away. I just feel like maybe he's too big for that to be an issue. A, would he sign himself into a contract where he would get lured into that and that would be too restrictive? It feels like he's kind of a little bit too powerful. I reckon he went in there with, you can pick the corner office, you can pick who you work with, and would you like to borrow my boat? I feel like it was that kind of thing. Also, if they really force him to do gardening leave, what are they going to say? You know, he's going to say, okay, I'll do the gardening leave in this garden surrounded with all the buried bodies. Like, he knows everything about Red Bull. I think Red Bull will quietly let him go. Antonia.
Let's not forget, of course, he's 65. Would he sign a contract where he loses a year, where realistically, how many years of a career does he have left? You know, obviously Red Bull are known to keep them on till they're dinosaurs. But with that being said, would he enter into a contract where there's a whole year out when his services are incredibly hot and incredibly desired? And also, he could break the contract. He could pay out the contract. He's got the money to do so. And with offers from teams like Ferrari, where, like we've said, he wants to work with Lewis, he wants to work with Ferrari, I'd be so surprised to see him take a year out.
I was just thinking about this, and then someone's also just mentioned it Sandra just mentioned it in the chat, which is the whole reason that Adrian isn't included in the whole cost cap is because he's actually a contractor. So I don't think he's actually employed by Red Bull at all when he is just under contract. So, you know, whether he just goes, right, well, end of my contract, see you later. I don't know. But just if it's of anything to go by, my Derek who left, he's been put on gardening leave for 6 months.
One thing I will say, actually, that's really interesting, Maria's just mentioned it in the chat. How compatible is Newey's working style with Ferrari? Because when you think about it, Ferrari are very set in their ways, as we have seen. Bringing in someone like Newey would completely change the axis of their work environment and the way that the whole team would operate. So it would be a massive change for them that, if I'm honest, I would be surprised to see them make, because they've been very stubborn to implement changes, for example, in their strategy department. And bringing in someone as big as Newey, even though he would obviously work wonders for the team, I do kind of agree it would be an interesting consideration. How willing are Ferrari to bring in someone that big and actually listen to his advice?
I want to know how much Adrian actually does, though, because as I've said before, through my contact who works heavily in the aero department, he doesn't deal much with Adrian. So is it more a case of Adrian going to a Ferrari that has Lewis Hamilton? Is that just a big gravitational pull where people will go, I want to go work there, and that will just pull in all the big people? Apparently there has been quite an exodus from Red Bull the last couple of years, even before this whole Christian Horner thing. So it's that possible changing of the guard again that we've seen through the years from McLaren, from Williams, from Mercedes, from Ferrari back in the past. So maybe it's now time for everyone to leave Red Bull and energize another team. And if that team happens to be Ferrari, so be it.
Well, we've overlooked the fact that he could also just go off and sail his boat.
Now, that's the boring option, though. There's no point speculating on that.
Or he could be a consultant for Ferrari's brand new boat division that just happens to be focusing on hydrodynamics that conveniently overlap whatever the latest aerodynamics of Formula One are, too. I
it's
mean,
a ground effect
many
boat.
things can happen here.
Yeah, it's a ground effect boat. Yeah, it is.
But that's one thing that makes someone like Newey so valuable to Ferrari, is he could help them in so many departments. Obviously, they've got their supercars, where him lending his expertise would create a whole new generation of road vehicles. So if he can lend himself to, the boat sector, the road car sector, and the F1 cars, in theory, he would bring so much to the team.
Oh, yeah, go on, Matt.
I was going to say, I like the gravitational pull argument
I like
of
that
Newey,
one, yeah.
though. This is where he will be most valuable to Ferrari, not even necessarily with what he personally brings in terms of attention to detail to designing a specific car, but the people who will be willing to leave England, let's say, and move to Ferrari just to put on their resume, I worked with Adrian Newey. The other thing to consider, and this is going back to Antonio's argument, is it's not about Ferrari. It's not about Newey accommodating Ferrari. When you're Adrian Newey, Ferrari accommodates you. Thank you very much. And if you look at what they've done for Lewis, they are clearly in a mood right now to put together something that optically looks pretty fantastic.
And is this symptomatic of Vasseur coming in and actually making meaningful changes in the team? He's got a fantastic history in the sport and a really good concept of what makes a team work, which Ferrari, they needed cleaning from the bottom to the top and then back down again. Actually, if they are having Lewis, who
they are,
we know Ferrari are stubborn with, okay, if you want to work with us, you're moving to Italy, you're doing X, Y, Z, you're doing it our way. They've got Lewis. They could be willing to make accommodations, and that would mean the start of a new era, finally, for Ferrari.
Yeah, I just watched Rush last night with the kids, so I let the kids watch Rush, and there was a few pillow moments. So in our house, when there's something not quite teen appropriate, we say pillow, and everyone has to grab a cushion and put it over their face. No peeking, and yes, James Hunt did provide that. But my whole family went Team Lauda. The other three that hadn't seen it, I was Team Lauda, and I'm so glad. And on the second viewing, it's much more about Niki Lauda. Look at Alex disagreeing. You just like the pretty Hemsworth. That's all you got swayed by.
I'm not disagreeing. I like the story from both angles. I really like Niki Lauda. I can't say I liked Niki Lauda as an F1 driver. I wasn't around. I wouldn't dare have an opinion of a racing driver that I wasn't around to watch race when they were actually racing, because that would be ridiculous to think they're the best in that situation.
Oh my God, the Jim Clark people. You're attacking all the Jim Clark people, and you're right to do so.
That is not what I was implying.
Jim Clark's the greatest, actually.
And yeah, it's interesting because knowing how James Hunt's life turned out and knowing how Niki Lauda's life turned out and the things that they did, and James Hunt didn't lead the best life and the best lifestyle, and his heart attack in his mid-40s says everything there is to know about it. And Niki actually is the one that came past all the odds in there. However, when you're watching the film, Chris Hemsworth is a pretty man, so I can just understand why faces have to be covered every time that comes on whenever he comes on the screen, because I have to do the same thing to my wife.
Yeah, don't look at Thor really, because that was a problem.
No matter how much fitter I'm getting, I'm not at that level, and I don't think I'll ever be.
To be fair, as a person who has an opinion of drivers who I never watched actually race, I think, to be fair, I can be quite objective about this. I find them both legendary in their own capacity. You know, for me, James Hunt is he's symbolic of such an era of F1, of the gentleman racers, of the kind of James Bonds of motorsport, you know?
Yeah.
And to me, that is so iconic because we don't have that anymore. The racers are athletes, you know, obviously they're incredibly wealthy and probably quite lucky with their love lives as a result. But, you know, the way James Hunt existed to me is so iconic, and it's, you know, so British with the Marlborough, you know, it's just, for me, of an era that I wasn't a part of. I can look back on that and go, oh, what a time.
Yeah,
but I look at Lauda differently.
Kind of, except every other scene in that film was an F1 driver stacking it into a wall and dying. And my daughter was like, is that true? And I was like, yeah, he used to die a lot. You know, there was a point where it was, you know, mostly a season wouldn't go by without a death in F1. So yes, I'm really, really pleased that we're not in that era. And some of the live footage that they showed on that exposed just how basic the tracks are compared to now. And they're just, even when Gert Berger and Alesi were racing, they would just hit a wall. You know, there'd just be a wall at the side of the track. And then, you know, no tyre barriers, no Tech Pro, nothing like that.
But it's not even that. It's when there'd be an accident, they would just leave a car at the side of the road. Be like, oh, it's okay. No one's going to crash there again. So yeah, it's a very different time. I can't remember the name of the documentary, but there was a documentary about the 70s and about this massive number of drivers that were killed in a very short space of time, to the point where they had a massive vote and boycotted races, and then they had Zandvoort basically completely rebuilt, and then a guy rolls over, car sets on fire, and the marshals basically did nothing as the guy just burnt to death in the car. And it's awful. I've never seen F1 as a blood sport, and it's like when everyone was up in arms when the Halo was introduced. I'm like, brilliant. It means people I enjoy watching racing on a Sunday afternoon, there's an even smaller chance that they're gonna die, because I like those people and I want them to live. And it
saved Grosjean as well.
Well, can we agree it saved so many drivers easily?
Grosjean, Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton.
I don't think anyone can argue against it.
No. But people did. I mean, to be fair, even some of the drivers, even Lewis Hamilton was like, "Oh, no, if I get the choice, I don't want to use it." You know, and all these people that say, "Oh, there still should be a risk element." You're taking a corner at 200 miles an hour. There is always a risk element. So yeah, no, but anything to make them safer and whatever.
That poor mic of yours, Alex. You know, I asked you to bring it closer. I just put it a bit further away. He just managed to just absolutely destroy it just then. Look, I know that we're on a tangent. I enjoyed the tangent, but when we can do like a rush review at some point, a rush watch through, and I would like actually to invite you guys to come around my house and watch Gran Turismo as well, because we will have things to say about that. It's now available for streaming. We'll all watch it, and an entertaining, well-made film. But as sim racers and racers, lots to pick apart. So the reason I brought up Rush was because there was that almost arrogance of the Ferrari displayed there as Niki Lauda turns up and he says, this is not a very good car, he says. And he goes, you can't say that, it's a Ferrari. And it's very much you're coming into that den, and then Lauda strips out the bolts or whatever it is he did. But I don't think that exists anymore. So I think you're absolutely right, Antonia, that Vasseur seems to have just turned that mentality around. And while there was always this Italian fortress where, you know, people from outside of Italy couldn't penetrate it, you know, that might well change. And the modern world has maybe the language barrier isn't so big anymore. Maybe people in Italy speak better English in general. I went and worked in a joint team, and I went to Rome, and nobody had any problem communicating with me. Plus, Duolingo exists and is pretty easy just to learn, you know, the basics to get along with. So I think Matt's right as well. If Newey goes there, it will be that he's going in to pretty much shake things up and take over. Whereas if you see him going to Mercedes, it seems less likely that he'll be able to do that because you've got James Allison there. So how does that relationship work? Yeah.
That's the thing. If he does go to Mercedes, I would struggle. Obviously, they would just change the team to fit around him because he's Adrian Newey. But I think they would be sacrificing a lot to bring him in. You know, they'd have to lose a lot of people and move a lot of people around in a team, bear in mind, that has had so many changes in the last couple of seasons from an influx of employees leaving the team. I think, frankly, it would cause so much breakdown in their team structure that it would be a lot of detriment, especially at the lower levels in the factory, amongst even the more junior engineers who have already got quite an unstable team environment. I think it could probably do them a little bit of harm before the positives of having Newey there would actually help.
Yeah, and so I think the next question is, how much of an effect do we really think that Adrian Newey has? So what Alex says is echoed by a lot of people that, Adrian Newey's not so hands-on anymore. The aero department wouldn't see him. But if you go back and listen to some midweek content we did where we had Mark Preston on, I think the week before last, and he talked about being a designer under Adrian Newey and the way Adrian Newey worked. And I think highlighted quite well why a project lead, although, yes, not in there actually drawing and designing the front wing end plate, the fact that he went to the engineers and said, "Oh, you think it's possible to get this performance out of this area? Okay, good. I'll take that as a promise, and I'll now go and speak to those other guys and go, hey, look, over there, we've been promised another 40 horsepower, which means we'll be going into the corner this much faster," and going around and just coordinating how those teams work together, and then and being able to fault find. So seeing that end product and going, okay, I see what you've done here. This is not connecting with that. Let's change. Let's move forward. I don't think, Alex, that he needs to be the one with the pen and paper on the chalkboard, or however they do it, to be an effective project manager. And that's my experience from engineering teams. Yes, there's designers on the ground doing all those things, but if you don't have a strong PM pulling it together, the work doesn't coordinate.
Yeah, maybe he's just the enthusiastic driving force, and he's got the clout and the knowledge to go, actually, no, we need to go down. I've seen 4 people give me their ideas. I prefer this idea. You're all going to go down this route, and that's that idea.
Be the grown-up in the room.
Yeah, maybe it's his final decision. But all I've been saying is that case of, and again, it has been echoed. It's not just been from my Derek, which is he's not seen a lot there anymore. He's not full-time. He's not in there every single day. But it's that case of a person of influence. When you have the history and the knowledge base and the reputation that someone like Adrian Newey has, you command respect. And if he goes, right, I don't like idea B, I prefer idea C, let's go with idea C, who's going to argue with him? Especially not anyone at Ferrari.
No, I completely agree. And the respect that he commands, I cannot overstate that. I mean, working in the pit lane, one of my favorite things about it is I get to speak to a lot of the mechanics and the engineers, which is so fascinating.
Tell us the series that you're doing that for.
GT World Challenge.
Go and follow Antonia there, having to wear a full fire suit in 1,000 degrees.
Oh yeah, it's the best. But we're in Brands Hatch next weekend, so it'll be.
Okay.
I'll be fine. But no,
it's going to rain.
I cannot. But you cannot overstate how much these guys. I mean, Adrian Newey is a god in engineering. He is, to a lot of engineers, one of, if not the greatest automotive engineers ever. He is respected. His ideas command the industry in so many ways, and having him at the team, even just as a figurehead, where he, like Jeansy said, where he coordinates, where he gives some direction, people will really respect him. And even just his insight on a car's concept, frankly, I think any team that has him, their world championship chances skyrocket.
Yeah, and this is the thing to come back to. We're all talking about him like he's mostly checked out of Red Bull, and by all accounts, he hasn't had a lot to do with that. But I wonder sometimes, for someone like that, if maybe he's getting a little unhappy not having yeah, a bit more hands-on. I'm not saying he wants to design the whole car, but maybe he's going like, I don't think I'd do it that way if it was me.
Yeah, no, I've got visions of Adrian Newey. You know how like middle-aged men will buy like a project car, like an old banger that they want to do up.
No,
How
no
dare
idea.
you.
Don't know
You're
what
in the
you're
wrong
talking about.
place to say that,
Hear me out,
Tony. You
hear me
can't do
out.
that.
Or go-karts.
Go-kart at 40.
Do you think that's how Adrian Newey views the Ferrari? He's like, this is my passion project.
His
this
midlife
is what
crisis.
I'll raise from the grave. He's been
I feel
watching
very
for
seen
years.
right
Yeah,
now.
I feel personally attacked right now.
but this is his like 1982 918, you know, that he wants to do up. He's looking at this Ferrari and thinking, I'd do something a bit different there. And he wants to resurrect it.
So, okay, here's the scenario then. And Alex, we have been non-Hamfosi enough. I think we can just we can relax. We can let it out a little bit. We're 34 minutes in, so we're good. But obviously, Lewis Hamilton fans will be looking at that and going, Newey's going there. It will fix anything that's wrong with the Mercedes. Hamilton's still on God tier form. Even Sainz can beat Leclerc, so that's okay. 8th world title assured.
I mean, I can't sit here and say Lewis is on good God tier form at the moment.
No, I'm the same.
I'm just hoping that it's more the case of he's got very annoyed with everything that's going on, doesn't like the car, and also because now he knows he's going, maybe his passion has dipped a little bit. We've certainly seen that from him in the past. So, but listen, I think if he has a Adrian Newey by his side, that'll energize him. That goes back to what we were saying about Adrian being this driving force and this gravity. And everyone in Ferrari wants to make sure they win a title. At the moment, the second best car is the Ferrari.
Yeah.
And in 2026, when Red Bull move away from the Honda and go to the Ford, which apparently keeps blowing up, that just puts Red Bull at the front. And Charles Leclerc keeps going off. He's not changed that at all this season. We've seen him go off. He went off in qualifying. Was it this race he went off in qualifying? In the last race, went off in qualifying. Leclerc still isn't the complete package. And I think over the course of a season, an energized Lewis Hamilton will wipe the floor with him.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. The thing is with Charles Leclerc, when he's good, he's one of the best drivers on the grid, and that's what makes him appealing. But he is a very volatile driver. When he makes mistakes frequently, and they can be very catastrophic. I mean, a couple of seasons ago, it was Ferrari's fault per se that the consistency wasn't there. But if he's not there offering week on the consistent packet, Spanners is doing a really funky thing in the background. You guys can't see. It's very distracting.
Cleaning the cat hair off of my hoodie. I'm not. Putting...
you guys, you made Spanners insecure.
Yeah, the stream pointed out.
You're pulling behind the curtain, Antonio.
There we go. I've switched to me. Go back to you, Antonio.
I'm breaking the fourth wall. It's called interacting. No, I completely agree, though. I think the dynamic between someone like Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton would be so interesting. I can't wait to see it.
I think Leclerc will want to jump on top of Lewis Hamilton, get on top of Lewis Hamilton
can
on a
we watch
performance
the
basis
wording? Oh, right,
as quickly as possible to not let him get in on his team. So I think it's going to be an interesting dynamic, despite the fact how much I like both of them.
But with all due respect to Leclerc, does he like Ferrari? Every single radio message, it sounds like he wants to quit and never return to Formula One again. I mean, I do completely agree, though. I think he'll want to assert himself. He'll want to prove himself. With that, inevitably will come more mistakes, more crashes that just make him seem more unreliable. But Ferrari are, to an extent, Charles Leclerc's own worst enemy. I mean, on the radio messages, everything, it all seems like they're working against him, which in a way kind of made me surprised that Lewis would go there, given how many team-based blunders there have been in recent years, because they're the reason they haven't won more races. But I don't know. I think Charles Leclerc, being so established at Ferrari, having been there a good few seasons now, he'll want to stand up against the world champion, but he'll also want to prove that in a system where they kind of have to choose a first and a second driver, because Ferrari haven't done that in a few seasons. They haven't chose a primary driver, and that's been an issue. With the new dynamics, I expect they'll want to be doing that, and he will want to be number one.
They'll have to do some inventing, Matt. They'll have to do it.
Yeah, they will. And I like that we've started to touch on this because there is, as you mentioned, a lot of transfer news to get to.
Oh,
But
yeah.
fundamentally,
No, we're talking about Rush and my cat hair.
if I'm picking a team and I'm Adrian Newey, I understand there are two big changes coming up that are almost certainly going to spread the field once again. One is the new aerodynamic regulations, and I think even the bigger one is the new power unit regulations. And if you're asking yourself what teams on the grid have the best history of being there or thereabouts with those types of regulations, then you're really only looking at Mercedes and Ferrari. And of the two right now, I'd pick Ferrari because I'm going to have the best, most experienced driver pairing to give me the data I need to get that car in the pocket it needs to be in when they're in the simulator. So to me, it's a no-brainer, but you can bet yourself every driver thinking about moving teams is asking themselves, what are the odds for the teams that I think I can get into?
But going back to Newey, let's not forget, according to sources, the primary reason he's leaving Red Bull isn't because he doesn't think that they've got a good chance with the new regulations, isn't because he's fed up and wants to lend his skill. The beginning of the turbo hybrid era disagrees with you.
No, we've heard quite a lot. I think everyone has now that the Ford is just blowing up every 5 minutes. It doesn't look good at all.
But it's a bit convenient, isn't it? That's the reason he's citing for leaving Red Bull is the Christian Horner situation and the power imbalance and the feel about the team. And quite conveniently, next season is going to be a very important season for setting up for the new regulation.
Well, you're not really wrong because, well, why is Verstappen also gunning so hard? And now, by the way, we know for all the, I'm not going anywhere, he's not going anywhere, he would never leave talk. I think it's confirmed that he has an actual formal meeting with Mercedes after the Miami Grand Prix. So leaving is on the table. And so what has Newey and what has Verstappen seen? So, I mean, look, and here, NC Paddock, who's signed up to be a member, this is a fairly new thing on YouTube, but another way to support Missed Apex podcast, says, who's to say it isn't Mercedes that Newey's going to? They've been very quiet about the situation and Max is in talks with Mercedes. Who's to say Toto might have quietly gotten Newey? Well, it is a toss-up between these two. It'll be very interesting. I think we're going to get an answer sooner rather than later. And I think whoever manages to secure Adrian Newey there is going to feel absolutely like they've bagged the king. And the king has come over to them. And I think that Newey going over there, I think the number one thing will be fault finding. So Mercedes are lost. They don't know what's going wrong. They don't know why it doesn't correlate. And apparently Adrian Newey can see airflow. So I think either of those teams, he'll tip up there and he'll go, oh, you don't even have a X duct hidden cooling thing through the flange majig. And they're like, what's that? And they go, oh, let me show you. And then he'll just do those little things that set them right because nobody else has got that concept right. But it is most likely setting up for 2026 still.
It's a bit like when I try and write an email for work and I don't really, and I've written a whole lot of stuff out. There's some good stuff there, but it's not quite right. And I hand it over to my wife because she's got an outside view and she can go, oh, okay, well, you've forgotten this. And now it's a perfect email. And I think that's the kind of thing that any team would be looking to do at the moment, which is have someone check their work, and maybe who is better to check your work than Adrian Newey. So I think they'll all be clambering for his signature. Obviously, I hope the news is true about the fact that he's rejected Aston Martin, because I don't want anything decent to come from Aston Martin. I want them to disappear because they've got the worst driver on the grid and the most annoying driver on the grid. So they can get in the sea as far as I'm concerned. Wow. But if he heads over to Merck and then has a Max Verstappen who's now got to try and prove something that he can win in another team, very, very interesting things that can happen in Formula One. It's going to be an exciting next few months.
I think what could prove turbulent within F1 is Verstappen's next move. He's very clearly on the horizon of looking for a new challenge, whether that be moving to a different team or otherwise. He's not looking particularly happy just sitting winning races. He's very vocal about being bored. If he moves to Ferrari, if he moves to Mercedes, it would be the move of the decade, no matter where he goes. And the question remains, he's been linked to Newey with saying, and rumours saying that if Newey leaves, Verstappen will follow. It could be the championship winning pair, regardless.
I feel like you've swayed me, Antonia, to be honest. That thing of like, it's all a bit convenient, isn't it? The timing's all a bit convenient. So live chat, tell us now, vote. Where do you think Adrian Newey is going? Go. So Ferrari, Mercedes, retiring on a yacht, a Williams resurrection, perhaps. Put it in the live chat right now, because I started off thinking, Andretti. I started off thinking that this was Ferrari, was a shoe-in, but the more we've talked about it, now I'm leaning towards Mercedes, and basically the whole crew, Marco, Verstappen, the other Verstappen, Newey, all heading down to Mercedes. There's people dreaming with Williams. It's not happening. It's not happening. And let's move on, because there's more transfer news. That has taken up loads of the show. I always feel sorry for Matt. Not sorry. Matt does such a great job setting up the topics and doing the show notes. I'm looking here, Matt. You've got enough for about 8 shows here, and we are currently halfway through page 1. Sorry about that.
Yeah. But delightfully, we're to an actual fact finally.
Yeah, maybe. Oh, what's the fact? A thing that has been confirmed. Okay, so we'll go to the thing that has been confirmed. There's a few things that are confirmed. There's one event we can't talk about yet, but Miami sprint race. If you're going to the Miami sprint race, come and hang out with us afterwards, halfway down between the track and South Beach. So if you're going for a cocktail in South Beach anyway, then come and drop in on us. We've got room to spare. We have aircon. We've got about 100 people at the moment, I think, attending. So we're going to do a sprint race review, which I'm wondering whether we should do more sprint race reviews. I don't know. I always think of it as maybe it would be spam, but it's almost like part 1 of the race review. We could ruin the specialness of our Sunday race review by mostly talking about all the things early on.
I mean, you could make predictions and be like, right, we can do a very short review and go, here's a prediction for the race.
No, opposite. It's the opposite, Alex.
Alex,
it's the opposite.
Okay.
If you do predictions, they're out of date instantly. If you just talk about what's happened without any reference to the future, then it's like a mini part 1. I didn't mean to poo-poo you. I'm sorry. Oh, you look sad now. No,
fine. No, I'm thinking about my wrestling thing where we predict all the pay-per-views.
Plug your wrestling podcast.
I'm on a new wrestling podcast because none of this lot are fun and want to talk about fun things. So I talk about wrestling with some geeky friends of mine, and we've got a podcast called Bitchin' About Wrestling. And it's a really good fun time. We just talk about wrestling. It's great. So if you want to download it, wherever you get your podcast, it's on there. I was super into wrestling in 1989, so I get it. It's kind of back to what it is now, though. It was back to those days now. Were you Hulk Hogan or Ultimate Warrior? That's always the question, you know. I was a Hulk Hogan guy. I was a Warrior guy, but Hulk Hogan isn't the person you want to talk about anymore. Hulk
isn't
Hogan's
it?
Not good.
Has he been cancelled?
Hulk Hogan's not quite cancelled, but very much on the verge. Apologies weren't accepted and things like that. So okay, fair enough. Okay, transfer market. Did I already play the bumper? I've lost track of everything. Yeah, I did. Okay, well in that case, we're in. We're in too deep. If you're listening to this, it's a Sunday show where we try and do the current news stuff. Please do go back and listen to the past 2 weeks of midweek content. I think we've had some really great interviews on there. So the stuff midweek, I'm trying to make it not time sensitive, not news sensitive, not always, but Mike Caulfield on there. We had Steve Laletta, who's the 2311 NASCAR boss, who's inviting me and Matt to be there in the pit lane, to be there in the garage for the race. It's going to be so cool, and I'm getting a tour of all their facilities. So they just want to spread the joy of NASCAR, so that's cool. But then we also had Mark Preston on, who started his own F1 team, Super Aguri, and went on to be the most successful Formula E team boss ever. So that kind of thing, Mike Caulfield as well, going through the 2016 season. That's the kind of midweek content that we're going for. So I hope you'll go back and
check some of that out. So, a confirmed thing, Matt.
Yeah, the confirmed thing that has set off all this wild speculation is our friend, and I say that very loosely because I don't think he knows who we are, Nico Hülkenberg, has agreed to drive for Audi, who were desperate for a German driver. I don't know why they'd want a German driver. I mean, they just are from there.
I like it when France was like, I know what will be great. We'll have 2 French drivers with a French car and glory will be ours. And then that didn't work at all.
Yeah, but it's not the drivers, to be fair.
No, I don't think so there. But okay, so Hülkenberg, Alex, moving to Audi. It feels like a money move to me. It feels like Audi are going in the driver market, waving a lot of cash around. But if it was that good a proposition, which I don't personally feel like it's going to be, I think it's just going to be the same as Sauber and Alfa Romeo. It's going to be that same level. Everyone's super excited. They're waving money about. Why aren't drivers diving at the opportunity? Why aren't they fighting over this seat? Why won't Sainz make a decision?
German company wants a German driver. Could that just be the reason they've gone for Hülkenberg? They wanted to get somebody confirmed who's a steady hand and will just give them good feedback and do the job properly. German driver sorts itself out really, really well. Carlos Sainz would be a really great addition to that team. I think he'd rather go to Mercedes. So we will wait and see on that one. Who else can I see in that seat? I mean, Fernando Alonso, maybe. They decide to just nick Fernando Alonso and have him over. Pass. It's a very, very weird thing, that whole Audi thing. So, Matt, what do you think?
Well, personally, I think the issue with Sainz and why he might prefer Mercedes is because Audi is bringing their first ever Formula One power unit to the dance. And we've just seen how that's worked out in the past. It usually takes a couple of years for a new power unit manufacturer to actually get it right. And I think if I'm Sainz, I'm asking myself, how many hyper competitive years do I really have left? And I think I'd rather be someplace I know can build a good power unit.
I will say, though, Sainz and Hülkenberg might actually be a really great pairing option. I mean, there's pros and cons to Hülkenberg. Pros, he's going to give you great feedback. You know, he's going to be a really insightful driver. Cons, he will never get a podium. You know, you've got to weigh that up.
He did make that deal, it's true.
But you've got Carlos Sainz, who very well could fight for race victories if the car is there. So to be honest, obviously there's going to be a lot of speculation with Carlos Sainz with Audi. I think that's quite likely. Of course, he'd rather go to Mercedes. It's Mercedes. You know, if you're given the choice between a Williams and a Mercedes, you know, you'd make the same choice because obviously. However, I can't honestly see Carlos Sainz and George Russell working well together. To be honest, I think they are really, they're quite a similar type of driver. I think George has still got a lot to learn, to be honest. And yeah, I just don't think he'd work well at Mercedes. Sorry.
I think George would rather have an Antonelli, someone who he can stamp his authority on very early on and be that number one driver. You bring Carlos in and you risk losing your number one status.
No.
I don't think this is the. I don't think this is the case anymore, though. But wasn't Lando linked with possibly going to Audi? I don't know how many more thousands of years he signed his contract for McLaren, but I'm pretty certain he was quite high up on the list of people who might be going to Audi to again lead that team, because he's not getting any wins with McLaren, and you can tell how frustrated Lando is.
It's building. I think he thinks he's in the right place.
The Lando we have now is not year one, year two Lando that we had in Formula One, who was the fun guy, who was the guy who was the social media lad. And I think the TV shows, or the Sky channels and all that, were all trying to really influence him and get him to do fun, wacky things on the show with them. And he got fed up with it, I think. And we now have a much more serious, less fun Lando, who just wants to focus on his racing, and I don't think it's done a great deal for his credibility. Not credibility, but his popularity.
Alex, you've taken us around 4 different topics there, so I feel like we need to kind of.
Always.
I've been trying to write down so we can double.
And you think my multi-part questions are bad?
I've been learning from Matt. You know, Matt asks multi-part questions, so I thought I'd do multi-part conversation pieces. Like, you want me to learn from Matt?
Which one of the 5 topics are you coming in on? And that's the one I'll go to.
I would like to discuss Lando Norris's career trajectory and dismantle it slightly.
Okay, go for it.
I would love, don't get me wrong, I would love to have faith in a relationship the way that Lando Norris has faith in McLaren. I would. I love McLaren to my core. You know, they're a fantastic team, so much history. We all want to see them win races. We all want to see another McLaren World Championship. They're McLaren. It's not going to happen. Not in the next few years. They slipped massively with Daniel Ricciardo. If I'm honest, I think Zach Brown needs to kind of step back and re-attack the team. Not Zach Brown. Gosh, what am I talking about? I think they need a complete bottom to top re-go through to even be close to attempting championships. And Lando Norris has grown with the team a lot, and I know that he has a big connection to them. But signing for that long, this early in his career, I think is a really big misstep. He's going to be. It would be like marrying the first person you fall in love with when you're like 18 years old.
I think Matt did that, and Jeansy.
Oh, sorry, guys. Well, good idea.
I was 32,
I'm sure you're happy.
but otherwise, yes, you're correct.
Definitely wasn't me.
Right, which of the other 5 Van Gene topics do we need to go to? Russell. There we go. You said...
Georgie boy being number 1.
If Verstappen goes to... I think that's gone. The number 1, I think they've seen it. I think they've had a long look at George Russell and they know he's not number 1. So that's why they made a real big move for the Antonelli thing, made a huge deal of that, making a huge move for Sainz and for Verstappen. It's the Verstappen one. If the Verstappen one goes well, that is disaster. That's end game for Russell. Russell's got 1 season left. If Verstappen goes there, Russell isn't staying on. They're bringing Antonelli in, and that's him cooked. It's over. Which is sad for you, Alex.
Yeah, listen, I'm a big George fan. I do believe he's the real deal. I think the biggest problem for George, he had a real false dawn in his first season with the team, getting the win over Lewis, and he needed to have a reevaluation, and then got absolutely trounced last year, but now is obviously getting the better form this year. But he's a bit too hot-headed. He just needs to calm down a little bit and just rely on the fact that he is a bloody good driver. I think if they bring Antonelli in, he will be the number 1. If they bring Max in, obviously not. And if they bring Carlos in, it's a Lewis Nico situation all over again, where it's a case of whoever gets the first corner first, whoever gets past the finish line first, that's my number 1 driver.
Yeah, but that will be from the midfield, so it'll be slightly different.
Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting to see if Merck can pick things up, especially if they don't land Adrian Newey. They seem a bit directionless as far as the car's concerned. They don't understand their problems.
They don't have to not understand their problems much longer, because the regulations are going to change. And I'm thinking are going to head a little bit back their direction in terms of sort of the wheelhouse where they know more about the aerodynamics. But I think the problem for you with Russell is that he's got Leclerc-itis. I would diagnose him with the exact same thing as Leclerc. He's got talent, he is fast, but there's some part of what it takes to be good in the world championship winning kind of way he hasn't quite got his brain around yet. And I think, say what you will about Sainz, he's not as fast as Leclerc. I think you would argue Sainz absolutely does have that ability.
I agree. I think with drivers like Leclerc and George Russell, they kind of seem like they never settled into the cars the way that we all expected them to. And that's why their performances have been so hot and cold. I mean, George Russell seems to love to bin it in the last lap when he's doing well in a race, doesn't he? I mean, you can't, when you're performing well, keep making errors. That's, the only time you're realistically looking at a podium, you're going to send it into a wall. Come on. I think I think George Russell's a fantastic driver. I do. And in an alternate parallel universe, maybe he's out winning championships. But as long as drivers like Lando Norris, like Max Verstappen are on the grid, he will not win a world championship. And I can very easily see him being replaced if his performances do not get more consistent and frankly just better over the next couple of seasons.
So the criticisms of Leclerc and Russell are here. I have to point out are coming from the two only people I know that I've seen on the ground of a racetrack fully out of their vehicles. So I've seen Antonia flop out of a car. At least Van was conscious. That was in the end. That was funny, Antonia, that you had no idea you were unconscious until I showed you the footage. And then Van had a wheel come off. The one of the other crew panel members may or may not have been the one to attach it. Fully fell off and then went into a pit wall at quite a rate. One of the, again looking back, knowing you're okay. One of the funniest, most energetic crashes I've seen, because the tyre wall really did.
I landed on my feet.
You eventually landed.
I did a superhero landing and landed on my feet.
You were on the ground for a good amount of that time. Anyway, I'm just acknowledging that these are obviously we're talking at the very, very highest level. Leclerc has been given a big long chance at the top, and George Russell has had a big long chance at the top. And I do just feel like the management, that it's not the biggest vote of confidence, is it? When Lewis Hamilton was interested in Red Bull, what did they say? No, hell no. We've got one of those. Why would we have two of those? That's not what Mercedes are saying. Now, why would we have Max Verstappen when we've got George Russell?
Have they had their chance at the top, though? Realistically, has George Russell had the car that can win races since he joined the team? Not even a little bit. Has Charles Leclerc had the strategists who let him do well? No. I know I always talk about this, but looking back a couple of years, Charles Leclerc was winning races. He was looking really strong in the championship, and it was the Ferrari pit wall who let him down. It wasn't his ability. I think I'm going to go back to this argument, and everyone can get mad if they want, right? Put Russell, put Charles Leclerc in that Red Bull, they'll win the races. Anyone like that, any of those drivers.
Yeah, not Perez.
So your argument is that he's better than Perez?
I don't think Perez is of that caliber, no. I honestly, unfortunately don't. I don't think Perez, compared to Charles Leclerc in the same car, would do as well. No.
Well, he's in that car and can only just about get on the podium.
I think
I'm now antagonizing Spanners. I can see him deep breathing.
Okay, Spanners, argue with the wall. Perez's time is over.
Yeah, it's not gone well. I'll admit that. And he's of an age now. That was his shot. Do you know what? He took the shot. How many people have ducked that challenge? We could list them. Sainz is probably ducking it. Sainz is waiting to see if Verstappen goes. Yeah, Alonso has allegedly ducked it. Norris has allegedly ducked it as well. So a lot of people ducked that, and he couldn't. So Perez could have taken a year out and then gone to Williams, yeah, and been looking like a hero at Williams for the last couple of years.
Sainz has already had that challenge.
Early on.
If I'm being fair, Sainz already took on Verstappen. It was closer than you think.
That wasn't his final form. That wasn't even his final form.
I think he'd go back if they offered it to him. If he doesn't go back, it's not because of the car right now. It's because he's heard the same rumors about the power unit we've heard.
Possible. Okay, where I'd like to take this now is back to, the topic I was talking about before it all got Van-Gened. We were talking about Nico Hülkenberg. Can anyone remember?
Wait, is he in Formula One?
Yeah, he's in Formula One.
I thought he was a reserve driver. Okay, never mind.
Do you know what? There's two of the panel where I just brace myself every time for chaos. If Van-Gene's on or Christian Pedersen's on, I know it's not going to go to plan. But here's the question I want to ask. How good is Nico Hülkenberg? And I think one of the biggest achievements he's had that showed us, was when he subbed in for Lance Stroll, because we always talk about how, when you sub in, it's nearly impossible. You haven't had season testing, you haven't had this, that, and the other. It's someone else's car. But Hülkenberg just came in and was just on pace. It was, You could have not told us. Was it Vettel that was out that race? Wasn't it? I can't think it was. I think it was Vettel and Stroll, wasn't it, in the team when Hulkenberg subbed? And it was seamless and smooth. He just jumped in and did it. You know, there is a chance that Hulkenberg is massively underrated.
I think one thing about Nico Hulkenberg is he'll do right by the car. He'll put in a reflective performance 99% of the time. You know, you don't see him making crazy errors too much. And in the Haas, he's done a pretty solid job. And can I just say, he's a really nice guy.
How do you
genuinely know? I've met him.
You met
I've
him?
interviewed him.
Oh, he was nice.
But generally around the grid, he's not like I was just saying in the chat to a lot of the patrons who were going on, you know, about there's a few drivers on the grid who necessarily don't have the best reputation. And it's hard to judge how well we know them because we don't know them, right? But someone like Nico Hulkenberg will contribute a lot to the environment of a team, but also will put in good performances with the car. So going back to the Audi discussion, he'd be quite valuable.
He looks like a Disney prince, doesn't he? That's annoying.
I think you have a bigger crush on him than anyone I've ever met. I've never heard anyone going, "Oh yeah, that Nico Hulkenberg."
No, but it's like if you from scratch go, let's build a Disney prince and then put him in F1. That's what you come out with, isn't it? That's just facts. I don't think we have to see anything into that.
I'd say Carlos Sainz with the like Prince Eric hair.
Yeah.
I can give you something not to like him on Spanish. He's really tall.
Yeah, I don't like that. He's too tall. Tall people are stupid and got big feet.
Me and Chris saw him at the scooter racing thing where he had a team at the scooter racing thing, and he towered above everybody. Mm-hmm. He was a very, very tall man, and he's actually Chris Hemsworthy looking, just not as muscular.
Yeah, okay, but where's the team? He's the typical, archetypal midfield journeyman, isn't he?
He's a baseline. He's a good baseline.
But he's been a consistent baseline.
Yes, absolutely. And listen, I don't think it's a bad idea for him to end up in that Audi team. If you're going to put a driver in a new team, you need someone who is going to go out there, be consistent, not smash the car up every session, every week, and he's just going to put in an absolutely solid baseline performance. He's the one you want, and then you put in a Carlos Sainz or a Lando Norris or one of the top echelon drivers who can go out there and be your number one driver. Nico isn't stupid. He knows he's not winning any world championships unless he lucks into the best car by a mile and he's teamed up with Rubens Barrichello. And,
catching strays. Ruben, what did Ruben do? Keep Ruben up.
We were having a conversation. Who said they met Rubens? Chris Stevens met Rubens today.
I had a cameo type thing from Rubens where he wished me a happy birthday. The patrons got that for me.
Oh,
and Rubens was like
Rubens.
Hey,
Rubens is
spinners.
lovely, but he's a bit like Jenson Button, where Jenson Button, no one is ever going to put Jenson Button in their top 10 driver list. If they do, they're nuts.
Whoa, Ranko.
Hey, hand goes up. She's nuts.
Yeah, she is nuts.
Jenson Button is not top 10 caliber driver in any real matrix whatsoever, but the cards landed well for him, and that's the only way Nico's going to win anything. So you want Nico as that good second hand, and you have a top tier driver alongside him. It's a good call from Kick, Audi, whoever it's going to be.
And let's remember, and you've sort of brought this up, but you're also talking about a driver who's had a lot of experience with a variety of different cars, is obviously quite good with the engineering feedback. And I know people tend to put down his speed, but he's been generally the quicker in qualifying. And most importantly, he is fast enough to take Hamilton out of the lead in Brazil when he starts third in a Williams. Not that I hold a grudge.
Oh, yeah.
It was in the Force India that he took Lewis out.
Was it Force India?
Yeah.
Okay.
We've done this one before where you guys said Williams. He got his first pole in a Williams, but that race where he took Lewis out was 2012 in the Force India. And no, I am over it. What are you talking about?
It was a quiz question, wasn't it? And Catman didn't give you a point. That's why you're angry.
Yep, something like that.
All right, Matt, where we at? Where we at in our list? We're approaching the end of the silly season transfers.
Yeah, we could talk about the others.
Yes,
that
the
are
others.
looking the others, and this is going to start with Joe and and Bottas.
Oh,
Because
yes. Who's out?
If Sainz and if Hulkenberg goes there, one of
Which
them
he
is
is.
out.
Hulkenberg's there, so that's confirmed. And you have to go, look at the timing, though. Look at the timing. Did they announce Hulkenberg in there before the Chinese Grand Prix? No. That might be the giveaway, and why Joe was possibly a little bit emotional after the race.
Maybe. I'd say it's just, where does Audi want to sell cars? Australia or China? But
That's a good point. That's a good point as well. Go on.
I think Joe needs a couple more years. If I'm honest, if I were choosing between the two, Bottas is an incredible. He's like porridge. He likes porridge, but I think of him as porridge, right? It's very
God.
versatile, good food, sustenance, right? But it's just porridge, Whereas, and they've got porridge. They've got Nico Hulkenberg, right?
No, he's not. No, Nico Hulkenberg is like Rice Krispie Squares. Come on.
No, he's not got marshmallow. He's
got marshmallow. He's got marshmallow.
You don't need 2 portions of porridge. You need your flour and you need your paprika, right? So I think Zhou could really add something, to be honest. He's a bit younger. He's got the Chinese fans who loved him, and he added so much to the Chinese Grand Prix. And I think it would be nice to see Zhou really given a chance in F1. I don't think the time he's had thus far has been enough to really see what he's made of.
How many years now?
3?
Yeah.
It's quite, it's
But I want more.
I understand. Everybody likes him.
I dabbled with Joe fandom when there was just a little spark of something, of some elbows out racing in his first season. But it seems to have really settled down. But also the team he's in, he's up against a sort of known quantity. The car's not been there to do anything spectacular. It's not one of these cars that, it's got great qualifying pace or great race pace. So, he can't have that glory run Saturday where he suddenly pops up in P7 like Hulkenberg gets to do in the hard. So there's sort of been nothing there for him to show. Bottas was complaining, my best performances are being completely hidden because of the car. But it could slightly be the same with Zhou, that it's just been such a middling car that nothing you do looks good.
Zhou is the perfect pay driver.
Yeah, agreed.
I think we've said this before, where he turns up, he pays for his drive, he drives around in circles. He's not a million miles away from his teammate. He doesn't get himself in these scrapes. He doesn't keep it. He doesn't bin it in the wall. The only big, massive crash he's had wasn't his fault.
No, that was Russell.
And that was George's fault.
Yeah, Silverstone.
And
he's not a bother, is he? He's no bother.
No.
He's no bother. Didn't even know he was here. If he was my kid's friend, that's what I'd say. Welcome round any time. Didn't even know he was here.
If you told me to write down a list of the drivers on the grid, I wouldn't be ashamed of myself if I forgot to write his name down. And that's kind of where he sits for me, because he goes missing on race weekends, and he's not there to do incredible special things. If he can nick a point here and there, that's kind of it. But if it comes down to who they're going to get rid of, Bottas or Zhou, they're going to get rid of Zhou.
I think
unless they need the money.
Well, that's the thing. A team like
Audi wouldn't
need the money. A team like Stake might. But generally, I think there's a bit of a problem at the moment with the midfield. So many drivers are getting lost. I mean, how much screen time has someone like Yuki Tsunoda had recently? I mean, there are some drivers who you do not hear from them all weekend. Proposal.
All right, listening.
Proposal. At the start of every season, like before pre-season testing, before it gets actually serious, put every driver in like a base spec car, let them have a few laps. Quali, except they literally all have the exact same machinery. I need to know an actual benchmark, please.
That's not F1.
But it's such a shame. So I know it's not actually obviously going to happen, but so many good drivers just get lost in having bang average cars. And it's such a shame. Someone like Nico Hulkenberg, I'd love to see if he could take it to Lewis Hamilton.
This isn't your fault. You were born in 2008-ish.
No.
2003. Yeah. And I think the era you've come into F1 in has been the most exciting, interesting era. But I think I've just become used to you don't get these answers straight away. And, the biggest example is Vettel. We didn't get that answer that question answered for over a decade. And I think that's kind of how it is sometimes. You can't just go, oh, let's throw them in the same car. No one would want it. It would ruin the magic. If you knew that the fastest guy out there was finishing P17, it would make the sport unpopular.
But with the growth and the increased opportunity for drivers to showcase their ability in series like Formula 2 and further down, for example, I mean, the speculation about Kimi Antonelli speaks for itself, right? If you do not prove yourself within 3 years, like we've just said with Zhou Guanyu, you're out. You know, there has to be some way of kind of understanding the root of these drivers' abilities, because so many drivers get lost in the grid, never get to show what they're made of. And it's like, tough luck, out you get. We've got someone new and exciting now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but,
that's F1.
But even Formula 2 isn't a level playing field. Despite the fact that they all have the exact same car, the teams are different. The performances, you see the same teams in F2 winning the championships. Or yes, you get different people winning races because of reverse grids and things like that, and there's some crazy stuff going on. But the same teams or the same people around teams win all the time in F2, because it also comes down to how you run the car. There is no such thing in any motorsport as a level playing field. The closest you get is in touring cars, but they add massive weight ballasts, success ballast to anyone who wins a race. So it's not real anyway.
I love being around for Antonio discovering that life is fundamentally not a fair place to be. This has been very enjoyable for me. But I want to mention some other names that have popped up that are actually still on the grid that is going to complicate things further. We've heard, for example, Ocon's name discussed at Audi on the short list, apparently. And for some reason, Gasly, too, might be looking to leave Alpine. So that leaves some new spaces, but also puts more pressure. I mean, will either of the drivers be at what is about to be Audi next season is my real question here.
I don't think Audi's shopping list is that ambitious. So they've gone for gettable, good, solid midfield drivers. So Perez would have qualified for that before his stock went down in Red Bull. If this was 4 years ago, Perez would be top of that list. Yeah, and Ocon and Gasly do fit in that as well. They're not making a punt for, Leclerc. They weren't making moves for Hamilton as far as we know. So people who are getting very excited about Audi coming in, I think need to temper their expectations a lot. Like, be super realistic about what would constitute a good entry.
Are Audi just going to be another Alpine?
Well, if that would be the top. I think that would be the top end of their ambition. And if they overtook Alpine quickly, that would count as success. So I think people are a bit unrealistic about how appealing Audi is to drivers. It's basically Sauber, and it will be for a while.
I agree. I think there's not a lot that's going to come from Audi in the first couple of years. Obviously, they've really prioritized it, though, with their funding, with the team development. Audi have poured a lot into their F1 pursuit. So I do think, they could come in and, be a solid midfield team. But the reality of the situation is this. 90% of F1 teams don't score very many points. 90% of F1 drivers are not remembered. They don't go down in history as winning races and being memorable. They're, even from the last 5 years, how many drivers can you name that were on the grid 6 years ago that actually had an impact on the sport? Because big drivers like Lewis Hamilton, like Max Verstappen, any of those in the top 25% of the grid would never risk a solid seat at a reliable, tried and tested team by going to Audi and saying, let's see what happens.
I think you're slightly wrong there, because, a lot of drivers score points now. Points get given away. They get given away like candy. Everybody wins a medal. Why do points go all the way down to 10th? It's not a participation award. Why would you go down to 12th? I believe you should only get a point if you win a race and are able to cut off at least 2 heads of a triple-headed Hydra dragon. And even then, only if you can flambe the heads into a great barbecue. Only then should you get a point. This talk of points all the way down to 12, disgusting. What have we become, Van Gien? This sport used to have men. Now it's just everybody gets a cookie.
Let's just do medals. You get gold, silver, and bronze for the top three. To be fair, the whole points thing, I've been saying for a long time, points should be scored for everyone who finishes a race.
Agreed.
Because how many times does it get really annoying, especially when we used to have the 3 other teams that turned up in F1 for a short period of time, their names change, Caterham, Manor, and hormone replacement therapy, HRT.
Marussia? No.
Marussia, whatever they were all called. There were some various different names as through the years. But how unexciting was it if Marussia finishes 16th, they've got more 16th. No, just give them all points. You haven't got to earn points. It is a scoring system. You earn your position in the championship. And if you're in the top 3, you earn that 1, 2, 3 on the podium. Points aren't a thing that are sacred and need to be kept and cherished, because the point system has changed loads throughout the history of Formula One. It used to be for the top 6 drivers. It used to be 9 points for a win. It's pointless. It doesn't make any difference. So just give everybody who finishes points, except the person who finishes last. So if all drivers finish and someone finishes 20th, they don't get a point. But yeah, that's what I want to see, because then you actually get a proper idea of what the order is.
Got pretty excited there, Alex. Got pretty emotional. Yeah.
Yep.
Ranko.
That's how I feel.
Ranko.
I think there's 2 strains of argument here. Obviously, there's points inflation going on. We're seeing an economy where the meaning of a point is diluted a lot, because obviously if everyone wins, no one wins. I agree. But I used to, before I understood, how sponsorships worked, I always just thought, well, why don't teams like Williams a couple of years ago just not bother going out or retire the drivers when they realize they're not going to score points and then save their power units?
Yeah, it happens. That does happen. Alonso went through that mysterious phase at McLaren Honda where every time he was 12, but there's some kind of problem with the car. Don't retire the car, Fernando. I'm already in the pit lane. Oh, it would be a hassle. I'd have to go.
Have a vibration.
I'd have to go.
It's the nut behind the wheel.
I'd have to go back out again. It would be a whole faff. So that definitely does happen. And it's not like there's material things. It isn't everybody gets a medal. It's not like we'll give you money. In fact, it's the opposite. We'll charge you money if you get a point. It's just a way of ranking it so that the competition down at the bottom means something. We already do count back if you're level, so no one's objecting to that. That isn't everybody gets a medal. This is just making it actually make sense. So, for example, the big example is George Russell versus Robert Kubica, and Russell absolutely was on top of Kubica for that whole season. Kubica did great, but he wasn't in the condition to compete really with Russell. Got 1 point and beats George Russell. That doesn't make sense.
And I can still bring that up as an argument till today, and I love it.
Yuki Tsunoda had a similar thing. He had a whole bunch of races where he was 11th.
Yeah.
Smacking really close to the back of 10th for like 4 or 5 races in a row. Has nothing to show for it. So, yeah, it doesn't make any sense to not give points out.
So the thing that I want to get in here, because this is down to it. You're going to ask yourself, well, what if we already had this system in place? And the other big argument for it is because the top teams are so reliable. It's very unlikely if you're the back, you're fighting for that 10th place. So we need to expand it a little bit just due to reliability. But the thing that I want to bring up is in the Constructors' Championship, Haas would have gained 7 points thus far in the season. And they'd actually be P6 and ahead of RB, who would have gained 3 points and would be down to P7. So already, if we were giving points out down to 12, we'd see a change in the Constructors' Championship based on that. And it would be a 17-10 lead for Haas for that 6th place. And that's not an insignificant amount of money.
That's the thing. For the purpose of sponsorships, the teams at the bottom, every point matters. They've talked about it at length. 1 point can be the difference, seriously, because it can mean the difference between 9th in the championship, 10th. It's a really big battle down there. And I do agree with Jeansy. Give them a point for finishing. They've got the car through the race without being in any trouble or causing any trouble. I don't see any downside, to be honest. It's the winner still gets the points. He still gets the number one position. It wouldn't really make much difference. Surely it would just be more fair.
So the value of that single point, that gaining a championship point, it evolved because it used to be 6th, it used to be 8th, and now it's 10th, and it was still seen as getting that point. So when it was 10th and Bianchi got a point at Monaco or something like that, one of those bottom teams that Alex mentioned got the point, and it was super special because it was really hard to do. I get that, but it was also completely artificial and fabricated. Somebody set the limit somewhere. So there's nothing special about 10th place. If you think it's wrong to reward 12th place because that's mediocrity we're rewarding there by giving them a point. Well, I mean, the same is also true of 10th, yet people are happy to defend the 10th place for a point. So really, if you're arguing against 12 places getting a point, then surely you wouldn't mind going back to 6. That's the test of your argument, is would you go back to only the top 6 getting a point? And I think hardly anyone would.
But that's the thing. It's not just the finishing position that awards points. It's the fastest lap of the race.
Oh, yeah.
Why on earth is someone in P11 who gets the fastest lap of the race not allowed to have that point? They were the fastest of the race. Give them the point. Van Geen's about to disagree with me, but if you've objectively scored the fastest lap of the race, does it matter if you're in 10th or 11th? Give the guy the credit.
She's filibustering. You're just going to keep talking.
It's because the whole reason they didn't count it is because anyone who wasn't in the top 10 would just go and put new boots on to try and get a point. But if you're giving points for all of the places, you can then just give a point for the fastest lap, because no one's going to give up 6 points to go and get the fastest lap.
Okay, but you also now need to worry about the sprint race points, because I heard Dominica, the panel are sad. Dominicali said, well, I don't see any reason why we can't just have 45 sprint races. Let's have 2 sprint races per weekend and then sometimes do the full race. But I think we said this when they first brought in the sprint races. The intention is always, from the first sprint race, in fact, where the viewing figures for the sprint race were higher than a practice session. From that moment, we knew they were locked in. They were absolutely locked in. Of course, they were going to always move towards more sprint races. I think that's the future. I don't think there's anything we can do to stop that. I think it's locked in. We're just going to see more and more every year.
From a Liberty Media perspective, it's a way of locking in viewers for one more day. That's, to be honest, 99% of what it bubbles down to. It's more action for longer. But from a racing fan's perspective, I can't remember which driver said it, but they said it kind of ruins the surprise of it for the actual race. You already know who's coming in with a good, strong car because you've seen them just win the sprint race. I kind of like that it all comes down to the Sunday. It's everything comes down to this. It's all or nothing. You crash out, you get 0 points. That's your weekend done. I don't like the redemption thing. I mean, we saw it quite a lot of times a couple of seasons ago where a driver would have an absolute shocker of a quali, would work their way back up through the sprint, and then they'd still have a win, even if they had nothing to show for it on the Sunday. I don't like that it kind of dilutes the win for a driver.
Well,
I've silenced everyone. Oh, I must be right.
Nah, Matt was just on mute.
I was just taking a very large breath off mic so you didn't get that ugly sound, because I have a lot to say. It's challenging in Formula One because Formula One's not the only sport to employ sprint races. Famously, MotoGP does as well, and they have them every weekend. And having consumed a few of them now, I'm noticing some big differences. And that's namely into wit. You can have entirely different results in the sprint and in the long race. And I think until or unless Formula One figures out how to make that work for Formula One, it does for MotoGP for a lot of reasons that I won't get into right now, then I don't want to see too many sprints because it takes up too much of my weekend. A MotoGP sprint is 30 minutes. Full race is an hour. but it takes up too much time of the weekend. I can watch practice in the background. I can catch up on articles. But if I have to watch the sprint race and the Grand Prix, suddenly anyone with a family, anyone with other work to do, it becomes more and more of a challenge. It starts to feel like a job to watch the sport. And you want to be careful about that.
Definitely my family will cordon off an area around me. And I'm allowed to say, Daddy doesn't love you when the race cars are on. Leave me alone. And I get that on a Sunday, every race Sunday without fail. I can't see the sprint weekends getting that. And I don't think my wife was actually quite cottoned on to how many races there are now. I can see something in her eyes starting to go, it's a race weekend again. Okay. I don't think I haven't been the one to say, no, there's actually 24 races this season.
That's the
It's
thing.
less than your pod.
Sorry.
It's less than your podcast with the guy from NASCAR where they have 38 weekends a year.
That's the thing, though. It's not just 24. It's the sprint races as well. And as someone whose job it is to watch the races, otherwise I can't talk about them, you get it dilutes it so much because it's not, oh, it's been 2 weeks, race weekend time. It's, oh, okay, right, another 5 hours of racing to watch in the next 2 days. It does become a lot. And obviously there's a kind of, what's it called, where you have to get an optimal between oversupplying for the demand and then just viewer fatigue of, I've seen too much racing, this isn't exciting anymore, especially for the newer fans to whom they are catering with these sprint races, who have joined the sport for action and are not loving the dominance.
So it's lots of less action.
It's just so much max.
It's like your birthday every day, Alex.
And it's the amount of casual fans that of my mates that I've had text me on sprint weekends going, what's the point of a sprint race? You know, so it's not even like people are getting it. It's not like, oh yeah, it's more racing. It's a case of, I don't understand why we have this little race. What does it mean? Does it have a meaning? Does anything come from it? No. It just gives away what's potentially going to happen in the main race the following day. It's basically a trailer for the Grand Prix on Sunday. And I'm fed up of it now because, like you guys say, you know, I got two young kids.
You're fed up of it? I'm in the acceptance phase, I think.
It's there, but even my kids are like, is this qualifying or is this the race? Oh, this is sprint qualifying. What's sprint qualifying? Then when's the race? And it's just frustrating, and I'm done with it. But I'm not going to be as moody about it as Kyle is.
Matt?
Well, fine. We're not really here to fix sprint racing, but I've long had the idea that using a different car would be a great idea. And I thought, oh, what about Super Formula? But no, they should use the F1 Academy cars and make the F1 drivers race in those on the Saturdays. That would be absolutely worth the price of admission.
Fair enough. And Antonia mentioned that her content, her world on social media revolves around talking around F1 on TikTok. Where can people find you, Antonia?
On TikTok.
I sort of gave it away. Yeah.
Yeah, my user's F1 Antonia. You know, I like a to the point title, so hence that.
It's very if you subscribe to Antonia's TikTok, it's all current stuff. So you don't have to wait. Like, we build things up and wait. For you, it's every day, bang, this thing happened. Here's what I reckon.
Yeah, one thing I'll do is I'll talk about the news. I love giving my opinion unwarranted. These guys hate it, but on TikTok it goes down quite well.
And Alex is giving his opinions on men in leotards. That's what you're doing. It's your life choices, mate. No point.
Large men in leotards. Let's be clear.
You like a large man.
The phrase is big men slapping man meat is the phrase that's used in wrestling. But things, there's lots of women doing that now as well. It's a very good sport these days.
Yeah.
But no, I haven't been doing any live streams or anything like that. So yes, that's the main thing I've been doing. But it's been interesting because I've really missed being on the shows. But family life has kind of got in the way with a lot of stuff at the moment.
Well, that's
so I'm
why
dying to go on and do more race reviews. Every time Spanners comes to to me and goes,
I know.
"Can you do this race review?" I'm like, "Oh yes, I can." "Oh, hang on, you need to be on at 11 o'clock in the afternoon." I'm like, "Well, I can't do that then."
Well, because we don't want to
So-
hang around all day anymore for the race reviews. We want to
I get
just do
that.
them shortly after the races. But that is a blessing, in a way, because we get to miss you. And then when we see you again, it's brilliant. And then after half an hour, we remember why we were glad you were gone for so long.
But thanks. But also, I'm doing my karting series. I'm doing it with Brad. So we've got a race coming up in a couple of weekends time. You can see our progress on Brad's YouTube channel. And if you want to watch me have a really, really massive crash in a go-kart, if you go to my YouTube channel, which is Alex Van Gene, you can see the crash from my 40th birthday bash, where it was quite heavy and quite scary, but I'm fine, so it's all good. So go and watch that. And after each race we do, Brad does a video of the whole weekend, and I feature highly because we do it together.
Yep. You can follow me and Matt as well. Links in the show
we
notes
do stuff
below.
occasionally. Yeah.
Next time you hear from us, actually, it will be live from Florida. So we'll have a little bit of extra shorter content throughout the week, just detailing, what we're doing out there, hopefully having fun. We'll be at the track Friday and Saturday for sure. And we will still do the Sunday review as well from Miami. So wherever we see you next, work hard, be kind, and have fun. This was Missed Apex Podcast. Absolute chaos. Oh, we're still live. Since we're still live, good job, everyone. Well,
Hillbilly us later.
Thanks, Spanners.
without exception.